This is a story in music, a very old story about a sorcerer and his apprentice. Now, a sorcerer is one who can do great feats of magic, and an apprentice is a sort of a helper, one who is learning the trade. This particular apprentice was a young and eager lad, too eager, in fact. Instead of tending to his duties, he was more interested in the magic that the sorcerer was busy with. And that's how our story begins. One day, the sorcerer was practicing his magic. He put on his magic hat and made a huge, beautiful butterfly appear out of nowhere. And then he made it disappear, all at once. The sorcerer became tired of his magic, took off his magic hat, and set it on the table. He gave his apprentice 2 buckets and told him to fill his great well with water from the spring, and then he went to bed. Now, filling the great well with water was a lot of work for the apprentice, for the spring was up many steps, and it would require a great many trips carrying the heavy buckets. So the apprentice had an idea. He put on the sorcerer's magic hat and waved his arms at a broom that was standing in the corner. Do you know what happened? The broom started to glow as if it were magic. Then the broom began to come to life. It walked up and stood in front of the apprentice. First, one arm appeared out of its stick, then another arm, and then it picked up the 2 buckets and started to move. The broom followed wherever the apprentice led it, carrying the buckets. It followed the apprentice right up the steps and dipped one of the buckets into the spring. And then it dipped the second bucket into the spring, filling them both. Then the broom, carrying the 2 buckets full of water, followed the apprentice down the steps and all the way to the great well. When it got to the well, the broom dumped the water out of the buckets and into the well. Then the broom followed the apprentice back up the steps to the spring again to get more water. Now that the apprentice saw the broom knew what to do, he decided to go back by the well and rest, letting the broom do all the work of filling the well. While the apprentice sat in a big chair, the broom continued to do all the work, going back and forth from the spring to the well, carrying bucketful after bucketful of water. The apprentice grew tired, and soon he fell asleep. He began to dream. He dreamed he was standing on the top of a very high rock out in the middle of the ocean. The rock was so high that he could almost touch the stars. The apprentice waved his hands and made the stars shine brighter. He made them come flying by him so close they made great blinding flashes of light. stars were flying faster and faster, and then one exploded, and then another. Then the apprentice made it rain, and by swinging his arms caused great waves of water to splash against the rock. The waves rose higher and higher. He caused it to thunder and lightning, and the water splashed and poured all about him. Just then the little apprentice woke up, still sitting in his chair. There was water all around him, and this was no dream. All the time he'd been asleep, the broom had been carrying water from the spring to the well, and the well had overflowed, so there was water all over the floor. The apprentice ran to stop the broom from bringing any more water, but when he tried to stop it, he couldn't. The broom walked right over him, bringing more and more water. Finally, in desperation, the little apprentice grabbed a huge axe and brought it down on the broom. Again, and again, again and again. Until there was nothing left but many little pieces of wood lying quietly on the floor. Then the apprentice went back to the well to clean up the mess. While he was away, a very strange thing happened. Each of the little split pieces of wood began to come to life. Then they stood upright, and hands grew out of their sides. In a few minutes, there were 100 full-sized brooms instead of just one, and each had buckets filled with water. They started to march down the steps to the well. Suddenly, the apprentice heard them coming. He was terribly frightened now, and he rushed to shut the door in their faces. But the brooms forced it open. They walked right over the apprentice with their buckets of water. He tried everything he could to stop them, but they brought more and more and more water until the room was like a river. The water swirled around and around, pouring over the apprentice's head. Kept marching with more buckets, even though the water had almost reached the ceiling by now. The apprentice could no longer stay afloat. He was about to drown. Suddenly, the sorcerer appeared, and when he saw the water, he was very angry. He raised his hands in the air, and the water began to disappear. He raised them again, and more water disappeared. Once more, he raised his hands. And again, until the water was all gone. Then he walked over to the frightened apprentice. He took away his magic hat. He took away the one broom that was now left. He handed him the buckets to go back to work with. And then he kicked him right square in the pants.